So I'm starting to look at this situation that I want to set up for. Now, first of all, I'm going to be in the summer. U.S. points I've already got. And they're not going to do me any good right now to run this first turn. For the SVN, I have 65 points of morale, 216 population, no biggie there. However, whatever troops I draft initially at the beginning of the game count against that, and that'll get recorded here. I also have 100 supply pool. I probably want to use most of that. I started counting the number of capitals that I have. Well, it's a lot. I think I was up to around 40 something capitals, and I realized we got a problem here because each South Vietnamese infantry regiment that I built is going to cost me 2 supply. I might be able to cover all the capitals with regiments, but it's not going to be likely. So now the next call is, okay, there are places on the board, and I haven't cleared this yet. And you got to do a lot of this kind of pre-planning. I don't know where my population chart is. Here it is. So there are places on the board where I don't control any of the population. I can leave those alone. Those are not my problem right now. Those are controlled by the NLF. Screw them. I'm not in a position to try to control them. So what I'm going to do is look for how many capitals I have in provinces where I have any population at all, to try to hold on to and hold on to whatever I can. One thing I want to do is I want to get units of all my divisions in play. The reason for that is that I get more leaders, which isn't necessarily a huge advantage in and of itself, but what it means is I get more draws into the leader pool. Some of the divisions, some of the corps will end up better combinations, where then on a later turn I can reinforce those divisions. Now they may end up swinging later, but right now let's try to get things that I can be active. I'm not quite sure what the deployment of my forces is going to be like. I've got to buy my replacement points, my replacement forces with South Vietnam, which means I'm going to probably want to buy at least like 5 or 10 sets of replacement points. So I have 20 to 40 replacement points on the board. Because if the NLF is attacking me, I don't want to lose actual units. I want to have the replacement points to absorb that. In fact, that's one of the problems with the U.S. forces. I have to have the replacement points to absorb whatever losses I take. Well, I have a grand total of 3 replacement points, and I can't get more. So I may not be able to actually act with my powerful U.S. forces that I start the turn with. On the first interphase, I get to ramp my commitment up. But right now, the idea is, let's suffer as little as possible on this first turn of the game. Now, what I did was I looked at the populations. I upgraded this chart because the visual chart is more useful to me. Now, of course, some of the photocopies are kind of ugly, and I can't really write very well in the dark area. I might be able to get a better photocopy of that, but I'm not sure. But if I get the lighting right, I don't know if you can kind of see it, I can kind of get it so that my writing with the pencil actually is almost visible on it. Sometimes I wrote over in the corners or whatever, off to the coast. Now, what I did was I grabbed 40, when I looked at the cost, I'm like, okay, so SVN infantry regiments are going to cost me 2 supply each. If I'm looking at spending about 20 of that supply on replacement points, well, give or take, I could throw 40 regiments down. Now, I'm not counting on all of these being regiments. Some of them may be smaller units, but I figured about 40 of these things is about what I want to put down in terms of controlling capitals. Capitals aren't the only important thing, though. If there's a lot of like VC kicking around in cultivated hexes or in simple towns, that's painful to me. There's no question about that. But the costs for, and I can tell this kind of analysis is probably putting some of you completely to sleep, but to play the campaign, I feel like you have to approach it methodically and, try to come up with some kind of grasp on how you can handle things. So what I did was I put little tokens in all the capitals where I have some population on my side. Now, I may have missed things. So like Long Con here, let's make sure I'm right. Long Con, I got listed as having 6 population, but I think I missed that. So I owe about 3 more. Now that has a population of 7, which means it's going to be over here. I know where it came from. So now we're at 43 of these tokens because 7 is a fairly good population, right? Long Con needs here, make it 44. It's got a lot of capitals in it. This is all very problematic. I can't do anything about it. Now, Dia Din and Saigon, I automatically get the whole population there, and it's quite large. I don't remember the number, but it's like 35 population or something like that. It is just wholeheartedly pro-South Vietnam. It's the stuff out in the outskirts that I'm having trouble with. Now, this feels like too many tokens that I have to deal with. I was hoping for about 40, and I was not necessarily going to buy battalions and regiments for every one of the 40. But yeah, I'm probably going to buy one of each division, to tell you the truth, and then go with these infantry battalions to try to cover less important places. But I may simply be incapable of holding. I've cleared all the zeros out. I'm not doing anything in any of them. I may be incapable of holding, say, some of these 1s. So things like Phuc Long. Phuc Long. I may not be able to cope with this. This has 2 of them. All right. Phuc Long. So now, I'm down to like 42, which is a better number. Let's look at some of these others and consider them. Now, Phuc Long's not very big, so taking one of those actually, that's 20% of the population was mine. Are there any of these bigger ones where I don't have much population? Well, Tay Ninh and Vinh Binh, I don't have much in. Those sound like good places for me to get rid of. So I'll hunt them down, and I'm going to pull the units that I was planning on putting there out of there. And I'm just doing this kind of balancing act, trying to get myself somewhere around 40, maybe a little under, so that I can buy pieces to a degree that I want to deal with. Now, 20 points. What was it? 20 support points for replacement. Means that I'd be getting 40 replacement points. Maybe I don't need that many for this first. God, I don't know. But yeah, it's a really hard problem to try to figure out what do you have to cover, what can you afford to give up, especially when you're not really sure, how the game's going to proceed or whatever. So these first turns, if the U.S. player doesn't know what they're doing, I think they're just hosed. They're going to screw the game completely. And if they don't put effort in like this, they're going to screw the game completely. So far, I've tried to put such effort in other games of it I've played. Not the first couple times I played. The first couple times I played, I was just like, oh, whoa, what? Wow, I don't know what's going on. Later on, I've tried to put this kind of effort in, and it has not so far worked, but I'm hoping, with some of the additional clues I have, whatever, that I can combine the attempt to try to really master where I need to have my points, along with not just tactical competence in terms of wiping out the NLF forces where I can, but also, you know, a competence in getting the right mix of forces to do what I need to do. I feel like I've in the last couple of times I played, I've had a fair feel as to what kind of forces I want. You know, the firepower, some of the other things. Now, somebody did point out to me that the Arvin Rangers are actually really powerful. And they brought up something that I didn't really think about. The Arvin Rangers don't have a lot of combat capability, but what they can do is they can surround units and they have a zone of control because they have strength points. Therefore, they can act as kind of a cheaper interdiction. The problem with them, they're still real expensive. Let's see what these Arvin Rangers are. Each Arvin Ranger group cost me 5 personnel and 9 supplies. That's the equivalent of, you know, basically 4 regiments that I can slap down. I don't think I can afford that kind of thing early on. I don't think I'm going to be doing a lot of offensive action in this first turn. But maybe once I do start doing offensive actions, rather than boosting my firepower to try to do the interdictions, I can try to hope that the Rangers can kind of close in. Of course, the problem, I'm including Arvin units, that boosts the reaction balls. But because I get to use them again and again and again, and I'll almost, if I get the number high enough, I'll almost always be getting some, and I may sometimes get a lot of them and be able to really hedge units in. That might be useful. Anyway, I'll keep going with the attempts to analyze and figure out what I want to decrease and increase and whatever. Shuffling, I got myself down to 39. That's about where I want it. Now what do I do? Uh-oh. Who's this here? Tuyen Duke. Yep. Tuyen Duke, I notice I have a red thing there that I didn't see. Tuyen Duke is probably someplace I need to be. Ah, shit. Where's that in? That's in 2nd Corps. So it's up here. Tuyen Duke, 3 out of 5, yeah. I mean, granted, it's not very big, and it's got a lot of fucking capitals, but, so that gets me back to the 40 that I've got covered. And that's about the number I was looking at. I may not end up buying 20 replacements. I may go with a slightly smaller number. Now it's time to figure out what goes into what. So the next step in my thought process, I've got 40 things. I need 40 units to cover that. This doesn't guarantee everything I'm going to buy for the SVN by any means, but I only have 27 of these battalions. 27 is a nice number because it's divisible by 3. So I bought them all. That gives me 23 infantry regiments I have to buy. I looked at the regiments. The 1st Division's got the best stuff with 4 artillery on it. Otherwise, the next best are the Marines and the paratroopers. So I doubled up on them. But actually tripled up on them. So I bought all the units of the Marine and Paratrooper Division. I don't get the headquarters for free with Arvin. What that means is, I'm just looking at the Arvin replacement, the Arvin supply. Yeah, okay. What that means is that now now I've got my 40 points worth of, or 40 units worth. And that's going to cost me, for the 23 regiments, 46 supplies. I'm not really worried about manpower. I'm going to have to pay lots of manpower no matter what. And the 27 battalions cost me 18 supplies. So now I'm at 64 supplies. I could probably burn about 16 more supplies. Now I want to deploy some of these guys, see what comes of that, and then make a decision on what else I want to get on the board. For the deployment, I'm going to put these battalions into locations, for the most part, that have low populations. Those are the areas I'm less worried about. Maybe low controlled population, maybe low population in general. I'm going to try to keep the regiments close together so that I can operate them as a division eventually, right? Some of these are already pretty damn close. So like the 1st Marines and Paratroopers, those guys are already kind of divisions, you know? If I spend the extra money on the headquarters for those, which I may well do, which is 1 personnel, it's 3 supplies though. That's pretty big. The alternative though, let's see, those are, we got 4 and 3-point artillery with no range in either. Well, these guys have a range. Yeah, they all have a range of 1. That's not quite as big as the 155 millimeter, but those cost 7 supplies each. Ouch. You know, I only have 100 supplies. I gotta buy replacement points or else the troops that I deploy are just gonna melt away. So let's be careful. Someone asked, hey, what's your solitaire system or whatever? There isn't one. I mean, most of you who viewed my videos, you know this already. I just play the game. If you're lucky, I play it by the rules. The solitaire system is I try to make the decisions as best as I can. And there's a reasoning behind that, which is that if I create a solitaire system, that's going to create one of 2 things. Either I'm taking away my own autonomy to make decisions, and to some extent at least, the game is just playing itself. What the fuck's the point of that, right? I mean, I can watch a movie or something. And that might be interesting in some cases, like, hey, I want to try a certain strategy, but I want to put parameters on it and I don't trust myself. Okay. The other side for me, but I'm in this for the fun, not to, you know, become better at the games. The other side is then it becomes an optimization. The other way it could be is if I'm playing one side and I create solitaire rules to kind of handle the reactive side, well, then I'm playing, you know, another kind of solitaire game, which is the optimization puzzle, where everything is absolutely calculable if I think about it too much, and I will think about it too much. As you can see by how I'm trying to analyze the deployment, which means that for me to actually enjoy the game, I just want to play it. I just want to play it as best as I can. My memory is bad enough that I'm more worried about the things that I forget walking away from the table regularly, or even sitting at the table, than I am about, hey, do I know too much about the enemy's force? No, I don't know shit about it. Any hidden pieces. I won't remember the things that I should remember from, you know, playing. So I hope that helps express, you know, hey, how are you playing this? Because it's got hidden units all over. Because I'll just fucking forget. The setup process, I've placed all the battalions that I wanted. The way I did it was I followed the lowest population areas that are on the map. Remember, I'm kind of ignoring the places where I only have 1 or 0 population. Those I'm not even buying at all. And by going up to here, I think, I'm not sure I dealt with Fuyan yet. I did, okay. Yeah, by getting up to the 7 population areas and filling those all out. I've covered all of these. There's one exception. I've kept one thing here in Long Con. I don't have an extra unit. I may jiggle that around. All of these are just, you know, tentative, because what I'm noticing is, well, I don't have a lot of striking force there. I may want to shift these battalions towards the coast where I have a little bit more capability to bring new forces in. It's the ports where I have the capacity to do that. I may have to build more units to cover some of these ports because it's still a town, it's still kind of valuable. There's always that issue. This piece up here, maybe not where I want one. Maybe I want something a little heftier there. so that the North Vietnamese can't just run in and smash into me. I've got to put a unit in Hue, I don't know. I got a Da Nang I've already got covered, but maybe I want a piece there, right? The reasoning that I need something in Hue is if I don't put something there, the VC can start there. So one of the reasons for putting these battalions down is to make sure that the VC don't start somewhere. And that is also an important facet to all this. Other than that, I'd be able to do strategic movement or or security operations or something along that side to clear the road. But you know, clearing the road in a city is not easy. I do not want to allow. So I think the NVA starts out with a division. Actually, I don't want to allow that to start in there, not by any means. All right. Now, a very tiny thing for the divisions. It's important that I keep them in command areas. Now, I need to cover both Saigon and, what is this, Gia Dinh. So I pulled the 2nd Division, which is just like all the others. It's not one of my better ones. And put that in here, because the Saigon, Gia Dinh, whatever area, it's actually the Gia Dinh province. That's one that I'm not going to lose population in, but I really don't want to lose Saigon. That's got significant effects on things. I ought to look at the rules. I'm not really sure if Gia Dinh is that important. Maybe I only want a single one in there. It feels like it should be pretty important. So that's why I put that division in place. That division has to kind of be there. Whatever is in command here is sort of directly under the command of the Chief of Staff. It's, I think, the one thing that's under his command, which I don't really want to risk. I don't want to, have that be a division that's one of my good ones. I want my good ones to be operating out in the countryside where they could be effective. But I got to make sure I've got enough force to hold Saigon, if I recall correctly. I'll look things up to make sure why Saigon's important. But I think it affects SVN morale, and I think Gia Dinh does as well. I do not want SVN morale to go plummeting. I'm sort of wrong. The game ends if you lose Saigon, so I definitely don't want that to happen. However, I'm not sure there's any bad impact to Gia Dinh falling, except that it's right next to Saigon and it would be painful to lose. So I do not see a morale effect other than for every third capital captured by the NLF in the preceding season, which, makes it the least important capital in a sense, and its proximity to Saigon, but I'm really not sure I want to put a division, a big division there. I may put a much smaller one in play there. And eventually garrison that with like some free world allies or something. It's not, I can't chance losing it. It might be possible for the VC to actually set up if I do this poorly and just take it, which is, of course, my great fear always, is that I set this game up and lose it on turn 1 or 2. Yeah. So the remainder of my points I spent on 5 headquarters that cost me 5 manpower and 15 supply, and I bought those 40 replacements. I could have bought another headquarters. There's another one that has a couple of units on the board, but I didn't really like it. I'll talk to these in a bit, but how I record that is over here. So the SVN population used, the 47 that I spent, goes over there, and now I've got a draft level of 47 up from 0. Starting SVN supply pool was 100. I spent 99 supply. I have 1 left. I have my 40 replacements there. That may be a little high. There's no question about that. But the last thing that I want to have happen is to be fighting battles where I'm losing units due to not having replacement points. That's a really problematic thing, especially for the US, but it's problematic for everyone, including the NVA. My headquarters. So most of the units on the board are either loose battalions or loose regiments, but I've got the 5th Division down here, these 2 units. I've got the paratroopers up here, which are a pretty good unit. I've got the most powerful of my divisions, the 1st Division, down here. And you can see a real focus on the swamps in the Mekong Delta. The reason for that is that's a very, very rich area, but it's also one that, especially once I add the riverines, I can start really cleaning up and getting some good points in. There are some areas some provinces I haven't committed anything to. This one most obviously, but it's not the only one. Ken Gang here, no, that's got a unit in it. There's at least one more. Vin Bin here I ignored. It's a low population one right now, or I have a low population control. I hope to eventually turn it around though with the force that I've allocated there. I like doing that. Moving on up, I got the 2nd Division up here, the Marines along here, and here's where I would have put an extra one. I've got the 3rd Division up here, but with the U.S. effort there, I felt like, you know what, if these get threatened and I wanted an artillery piece there in the form of an organic headquarters artillery, I'll deal with it. I switched around some pieces. I may switch around some more. So, for example, I've got this stuff in the Highlands here. Do I really need, say, what's this, the 23rd Division to be here, or part of the 23rd to be here? Could I shift it down and swap this out? Because this road, the coastal road, I am likely to be able to control that pretty well. Likewise, most of the places where I have these battalions, they're in the provinces where there's low population, which happen to be the inland provinces. They're the ones that the SVN Arvin has not done a good job of controlling. There's some serious problems in the Mekong Delta, though, that do need to get cleaned up, so I don't feel too bad about that. I put a battalion here because, hey, I just can't justify leaving it completely open. I think it opens the gateway to Saigon too much. But we'll see. And maybe the game will be over in turn 1. And I'll just say, oh, I took too much risk. That is, I believe, the Arvin setup. I don't think there's anything the U.S. can do on the first turn. So we'll take a little break. Maybe I'll come back tomorrow or whatever, and I'll start the NLF setup. And yes, I count this as playing the game because there's a lot of thinking and a lot of effort that goes into this. That's not just sorting counters and saying, hey, I want to do this. I feel like you have to do some analysis. And maybe I'm overthinking it, but I got to tell you this much. I feel like it's actually the opposite, that I'm underthinking, that I'm missing something important, whatever, because I've failed so massively with the U.S. all the time, every time. On the sequence of the setup, there are a couple of things that are purely mechanical that I had done ahead of time, which doesn't impact anything, but what I didn't discuss is that I pulled my leaders. Now I'm not using these little boxes, I'm just using the counter tray for the pieces. And I actually got a pretty good set of leaders. Now you can see everybody's at 10 or less morale, loyalty. The reason for that is the rules actually limit you on these initial leaders. You roll 2 dice, you add 2 with a cap of 10. So I definitely had some that would have gone above that. I got a pretty good starting set though. First Corps, not so good with a -3 effectiveness rating, which means I probably do not want to use Arvin very much in First Corps. But First Corps is where my U.S. troops are intervening. So that's probably the best place that I could get such a shitty leader. He's also low morale, which doesn't hurt much. Second and Third Corps are in pretty good shape. Unfortunately, Fourth Corps, I don't have the best of leaders there. The rest, all high morale and or loyalty and reasonably decent. Oh, I didn't talk about my main leader. He's hurting SVN morale, I believe. I believe the -1 is on the SVN morale and not helping anything. So he's not the best of leaders, but he's also not a terrible leader. He's kind of average, so I'm not really in the mood to get rid of him. Then across the divisional commanders, because I have all the divisions on the board, I get to draw all my divisional commanders, and that gives me some flexibility as to which ones I'm going to want to reinforce as the game goes on. The important first division, high loyalty and high effectiveness. The second, which is also boosted, has an incredibly high effectiveness, but he's not very loyal. Some decent leaders here. I don't remember which core the different leaders are associated with it, and I'm probably going to have to create some additional information to track that, just to keep that in mind. Decent leaders. I've actually gotten a lot of good draws. Now, the 18th division, loyal but not terribly good. Depends on where he shows up, but he might be a problem. This guy's definitely a problem, but he's low morale or low loyalty, so the fact that he's a -3, he's someone I can perhaps get replaced. Same here, and then these guys pretty decent. So I'm fairly happy with what I drew from my leader pool, and knowing that I've got pretty decent leaders out there means that I really don't want to I don't want to go out of my way to try to get rid of people who aren't very good necessarily. I might not get much better. The -3 is pretty bad. But do I want to hunt down like a 0 or a -1? No, I'm not likely to get a good leader in replacement for him. All right, now I get to go over and handle the NLF. NLF, I'm going to be starting with a starting morale of 10. This probably shouldn't be there. I have to decide how much of that I want to put to trail. These are numbers I used last time. I may not do it, as well as naval. Right now, the trail is probably the easier way to get things through, because at least that's what I'm guessing, each trail supply, I don't have to bring people in. Trail personnel, yeah. Each trail supply brings me 6 resources in. Of course, those are resources that I can only build along the trail, whereas the blockade chart, there's a level 1 Navy. There's never less than that. So let's see. Let's say I sent just 1 in. Well, if there was no blockade penalty, I would get that 6. Right, 2 gets me 12, 3, 18. There's 6 per. I might want to divide it up because the blockade's kind of low. And I also get to buy based on 134 VC controlled population and 90 supply pool units that'll go on the board, and I get 4 political sections that show up. And those can be deployed pretty much anywhere I like. In particular, I can place them in any cities, including capitals, that I don't have forces in. So that's all very interesting. Lied about something. The optimal status on the trail is actually level 4 to begin with. And I've been mistaken, there is an interphase before the first turn of the game. So we set the game up in the spring, and I've used the spring column for that, and then the summer is going to reflect from that. I had forgotten there's a North Vietnamese full unaugmented division. It can start in one of 2 places, either in North Vietnam or in Laos. I'm going to put it in North Vietnam. I always like to do that just because of that nice little road going there. It's kind of further away from U.S. forces. I want to try to take Quang Tri and use that up. My point analysis here. So I have 90 supplies. Supplies are my big deal right now. For the VC, each battalion is going to cost me 2 supplies. So if I build 45 battalions, which is what I think I'm going to do, that eats up all my supplies. I don't think there's anything else I want. Well, I got to buy some replacements. Yeah. I don't have to buy replacements as heavily though. Let me show you something. So the average battalion, there's one is 2 strength. There's 1, 2s, and 3s. So each one of them costs 2 supply for 2 strength. For the average of 2 strength, replacements cost 3 supply for the average of 3 hit points of damage. So it doesn't really necessarily help me to buy replacement points. I can take my losses on VC units. I can remember when they take losses, they get to reabsorb them. So I may well not end up buying replacement points with them at this point, which is kind of an interesting concept. The next thing I do is I count out 45 of these. You can see I still have a fair number left, so there's no close value there. I don't need the tax chit, but that's for, the attacks chit is for points that I get during an offensive, so I don't really have to worry about that. This is what I've got. Now I zone out on the populations again. I look at the terrain and try to figure out where I want to set my pieces up so that they're presenting a threat to the U.S. To the U.S. aligned population, the pro SVN population. And by doing that, something kind of cool happens. And that 45, actually 49 unit positioning, I've placed my VC units. And you can see I've spread them out all over. I've tried to put units in every province that I can afford to. There are some holes where I don't feel like I really can. So like in Sadek, the reason I'm not is because everything there is kind of adjacent to a road. I don't want to be near roads. I'm playing an exceedingly conservative game on both sides. That's my nature. It might not work to play that conservatively with the U.S., and I'm trying to temper that. But with the VC, what I've found is, in general, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I keep my units alive as long as possible. Because what I want to do is I want to get these numbers down. That's how I'm going to beat the U.S. If I get 200 population, I win the game. I'm already at 134 to begin with. So if I can make it very difficult for the U.S. player to defeat me in the field, then I'm going to gain a decent amount of population, or I'm going to be able to maintain a decent amount of population, and then I get more units. I've still got plenty of units in here. When I want to, I've got the NVA to throw into the battles. I need to build the VC up, and I need to make them a powerful force. If I put them on the roads, if I put them in the capitals right off the bat, what I found is those forces can be knocked out. And especially if the U.S. can throw in, if I'm getting an interphase, which I didn't think was the case, and I may not have done that in earlier games, on the first turn of the game, the U.S. is going to get a chance to screw with me if I'm in valuable places. Most notably, the discussion of whether or not I should have, just swarm Saigon with everything. And I could do that. I could do one massive operation to try to take Saigon. But if I set up for that, the U.S. can say, look, all the VC are there. We're just going to wipe them all out. We're going to throw a big division down there right at the beginning of the game and see what we can kill. And I mean, I could calculate out how much value there is there and what my chances are, etc., and make a good guesstimate of that. That would seem to me to be completely ahistorical in a way to like be a way to like completely screw the game. Once either the VC win on the first turn by taking Saigon, or the US is probably going to demolish the VC capabilities so heavily it'll be like an offensive, except with no gain for the VC whatsoever. Of course, there will be a high cost for the ramp up for the US to take that out, but it's well worth it. I've decided to go with what I call the traditional game. I would be curious to see what would happen with, just swamp Saigon in the first turn, see if the U.S. calculates right, But then what are you left with afterwards? And I think the U.S. has the capacity, with 520 morale to begin with, to throw in a big enough force to wipe out the entire VC contingent. The only question is, how well do they calculate it? What are their odds? Do they screw up a little bit and make some chance that they still lose the game there? Doesn't sound like the game that I signed up to play, And I do not get any NVN points except that I have that 10 commitment that I can throw in through the trail. Now that trail commitment doesn't really hurt me because I've got a fair amount of forces committed to areas that I would get C supply for. I've got a better multiplier here. I can buy replacement points with trail commitment, and they're usable anywhere. So I think we're going to commit those. Maybe not the entire 10 points. I may buy myself some replacements there. We're through the initial setup. I'm going to continue on and do that first interphase. That way the next video is actual operations taking place. Because again, we're going to go through a calculations period for the interface. The one thing we don't do in the interface is the population modifications. It's bedtime now. What else did I do here? Well, I made the decision to commit 8 points to next turn's trail. Now I could actually commit more. I could have bought I could have used my commitment here to buy myself some more replacements or something. I think 6 is enough to save those guys if they take hits. If they don't, it's not that terrible. They're just NVN, or North Vietnamese Army. They're not what's going to win me the game, but I'd rather not lose them. So since I'm actually in a place where the U.S. could attack me, screw it. Let's make it so the U.S. cannot attack me, because they can't cross. They can go to the border, they can't cross it, they can't attack. I'm not planning on launching attacks with the NVA at this point. Even though there's a weakness here, again, conservatism. All right, that's it for a while. All right. So, let me keep that here. The seasonal interphase, go through the beginning of it. To strategic war phase, we don't go through the record keeping. The pacification we don't go through. Strategic war phase, the U.S. has the option to do some bombing. Now, if I don't bomb the trail, he gets 9 supplies for every point he puts in. If I can get this down, I can reduce that to about what the naval option is. So it might be worth it. Let's take a look at strategic bombing. I have 21 points of planes right now, and there's no air defense. Now, I can bomb the north. The results there are more what are those presented against? Those are presented against the morale. I think so. I gotta look that up. Hold on. Bombardment is against the commitment points that are placed against the trail. So I've got this kind of weird decision that I can make. I can bomb the trail, and a success or two could reduce the multiplier for the commitment points. That's of some value, but the trail's kind of low right now. Beating it up might be of more value, especially since it has a permanent effect, compared to the resources that are sent along the trail. I can't even be sure that the NVA is sending resources down the trail, but because the multiplier is higher, it does seem likely. So now, if I'm throwing, say, 10 planes in, I am almost assured, well, if I throw in 8 planes, I am almost assured to do some losses, either on the unrestricted table or on the trail, or on the restricted for that matter. So then the question comes down to, what are the costs? That I have to find the morale chart. Restrained and unrestrained bombing do something to the north, to South Vietnamese morale, and looking, I know we get paid, I know we get hurt for bombing the north. There we go. So restrained bombing is -1 U.S. morale versus +2 South Vietnamese morale. God. I'm going to bomb the trail, and I'm going to use 8 of my air points to bomb the trail. So we drop the air points down to 13 that are available. And 8 air points plus a die roll. Oh, actually we don't want to do this because there are no points actually committed at this point, I think. Because in the pre-setup we did not commit points. Those are, and we don't have those points. We spent all our supplies. No, not our supplies, all our morale. Yeah. So actually bombing doesn't make any sense at this point because the points that I wrote down for commitment, that's illegal on the NLF track. The actual setup doesn't say that I put any points in, right? I don't know. Yeah, it does not say anything about committing any points during the pregame period. So there will be no points coming into Vietnam, South Vietnam, via either the trail or via shipping, I think, right? Let's see how this is. Yeah, trail and sea supply. So I should not have written this in. And what was the 2 commitment for? I don't know. Damned if I know what that new commitment was for. Fuck me. All right. I may not have the ability to pay the attention that I need to right now. This game started is just such a pain in the ass. As you can see that I've spent an hour describing what I've done, much less the 3 or 4 hours. I don't know. But yeah, call it 2 hours trying to figure out what that all means. It's just a pain in the ass. And it's something that keeps me away from playing it. It's one of the reasons it took me a decade to get back to it, because getting started is just so hard with the campaign game. It's not hard with the smaller scenarios. You have some pieces and you conduct operations. So I think what I've come down to is there is no provision for allocating trail supplies during the beginning part of the game, so none can be processed on the first turn. None can go through, no sea supply, no trail supply, which kind of leads to an interesting position of when the U.S. first hits, North Vietnam is not really ready for the intervention, and you'll be able to do some damage to the VC that they can't recover from immediately. Of course, we'll see. That puts us then no bombing, no trail, no blockade segment, we go to the officer replacement. And now I must replace leaders, I believe, in the bottom 2 spaces of the track, which is these. And I may try to replace some of these others, which getting rid of somebody like this -3 might not be bad. I think it's 5, 6, 7, and 8 I'm allowed to play with, but I have to find these because I can't remember. Yeah, okay. And replacement is I roll 2 dice on a 2 through 6, I replace, and on a 7 or 8, loyalties down 1. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't have this on a chart. It's probably written here, but I have to have a hand to see this. Okay. So I'm going to try to replace this guy because I must replace him. I get a 7, which is not good. He remains loyal. I'm sorry. He remains, and his loyalty is reduced by 1. I'll try to get rid of him. Got a 7, the same effect. Probably not what I want to do. I don't know where the 25th is, but it's just 1 unit. I'm not going to play around with that. I'll leave his loyalty up there. Likewise, 1st Corps. I got my U.S. forces in the 1st Corps. I'll leave that alone as well. That means I go to coup determination. Okay. Is that on here? It is. Okay, we put the camera down so I can read. I want to get the damn troop purchasing again, which is kind of the thing that I have some thoughts and decision. Here I'm just showing you mechanisms. So roll 2 dice for each 2-star leader. If it's less than the leader's loyalty, the leader's loyal. If it's equal, he's wavering. And if it's greater, he's pro-coup. Okay, so we'll start over here. Loyal. Next one's an 8. Loyal. 7. Okay, I am going to stop there because I don't have much video left and all I'm doing is rolling dice. I'll be back in a moment. Being an idiot, I'm trying to read from there. The cheat sheet, that's not what it is. It's 2 dice are rolled. Only 1 roll is made. I don't fucking remember what I rolled. Let's do it again. Okay, we got a much worse roll. So the line is basically here. These are all wavering, and I don't know if I'm turning them the right way. And these are pro-coup. Now let's look at the rules, because what we've learned is looking at the chart doesn't give me enough information. It's a good cheat sheet, but... Okay. Are there as many wavering and pro-coup? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No. Oh. Fuck. But some of these... No. Okay. If they're more loyal than wavering and pro-coup, the government's stable, lower the pro-coup leaders. That's these 2. Well, he can't go any lower. Now it's effectiveness. 1 die is rolled. If the roll is less than or equal to the total of division leader effectiveness plus superior commander effectiveness. Now this is where it gets tricky. Because I have to do a lot of checking. So, I roll a die. The die is a 4. I think that's across the board, right? 1 die is rolled, yeah. Okay. So now, what I have to do is I have to find individual divisions. And fuck, I did the divisional commanders, not the core commanders. This is the core commanders clearly are okay. The divisional commander would not have gone down. These guys would have just been wavering, so nobody loses morale off of the coup. I went over to the divisional. Okay. So what I do is I find the first division, which is over here in 4th Corps. And it's all in 4th Corps, so I don't have to do anything weird. And our number of effectiveness is 0 plus 3. I rolled a 4. He is ineffective. How do I mark that? And this sucks. Marker should be flipped over. Okay. This is a shame because he's a pretty decent leader, but he's not effective. At the same time, I could look at the 4th Corps here, which has a 0 plus 3. He also is going to be ineffective. So all the auxiliary units, if I bought any, I don't think there are many, but there are some. There's guys like this who, I think it's just, no, he's in Gideon. Why is he in Gideon? No, he's not, is he? I don't know. I think he's up there. Can't tell the borderline there. But, yeah, this would be directly under the Corps Commander, and that also would not be movable. So now I go through all the divisions and all the Corps Commanders and see if their forces are ineffective. It's an absolute bitch to try to figure out which division's in which corps over the whole map. You kind of get used to it over time, at least with the important ones. What I'm doing is I'm marking the particular core number on top using some counters from Europe and Turmoil over there. And TSS is harder to get to. It's my usual go-to, but this is kind of nice because I can flip them up to show if they're effective or not as well, which will just be helpful. This is taking me some time to do. I was mistaken about the Air Force and Navy. They do not, I think I said that they command the Marines and paratroopers. That's not the case. Those guys are allocated to the particular corps they're located in, so they don't give you this opportunity to like use something kind of cool, which I thought they did. It's probably something I house ruled at one point or another, and it just stuck in my head. That means we have finished. That's the politics, I think. I think there's still one thing left here. No, there's quite a bit. Okay, SVN leader loyalty table. When do we use this? God. Each season at the end of the morale adjustment, I have to consult that to determine whether the loyalty is a 1-star. I should have done this before I flipped counters over. So SVN morale, I don't know what the fuck it is. We look at it, and I mean, like with EU or other games, eventually I get used to how to store my papers and everything like that. But right now, it is not easy. SVN morale is 65. 65 is 69 or less. I roll 2 dice. I get a 7. That's -1 to all A's. Well, this was an A faction. That would go down 1. This is an A faction. That would go down 1. This does not happen. This would have affected other things. I'm not going to worry about it. I think we get enough problems to cope with. It would have affected the pro-coup rolls and such not. But I think we're okay there. All right. I think... Let's see if I can get through the fucking politics section. Okay. U.S. Yeah, right. The effects of SVN draft new U.S. commitment. Well, we didn't build any new commitment. When did we do this? Yeah. So... I think these all kind of get calculated in as we're going through the sheet. But at this point, there are certain ones we know are fixed. I'm going to go through the sheet and try to pick those. So among them is, for example, he is causing a -1 to the SVN morale. And I can just record that. But for the most part, I'm just filling out the sheet as I build my troops. So before getting to the actual purchasing of troops, etc., I want to get some of the ground level stuff taken care of from the political phase. In this case, the major affecting things is the population controlled by the SVN, which is 216 according to this. None of that's changed, and that gives a 0 modifier here. There's not enough U.S. commitment to cause a regular loss. If you can keep the U.S. commitment under 100, yeah, good luck with that. You can prevent the continual decay. And none of these factors are in play. And so then we go to South Vietnam, and again, we didn't have any coups or anything like that. So the population drops the SVN by 1. And I've also got to take the leader in play here. He's got a -1 on him, so I'll have to record that as well. And for the NVN, commitment's not high enough for anything to happen. New commitment will cause some, but the NVN always gains some, and they're going to get 5 more. Because of that, I'll start to figure out, well, I think I'll send 10 trail supply in. I want to think about that a little bit more because I may want to buy some air defense, but that's not very expensive. A couple commitment recorded for the NVN. I don't think that was correct. Oh, was it replacement points that I bought? Yeah, I bet you it was. Okay, so I want to buy that as well. I couldn't do that during the setup, so I've got to pay those. But I also raised the trail by 1, and I bought an air defense point. That gives me a mixture of things that I think are good, you know, for my moving forward. I do not remember what the suggested modification was for purchase of, maybe it was SVN supplies. I'm looking at costs right now. Now, you got to look at 2 things when you're looking at it. So, bringing in another Marine division and getting all of its goodies. I don't have all of the 3rd in, but bringing in another division would cost me 9 points, 3 for each battalion. Then I'd get the headquarters and any additional stuff. I'd like to spend points on SVN supplies as well. And if we find the morale chart, this is the other thing I have to take into play. Well, as long as I keep the commitment under 15, I only pay a single penalty. Under 25, it gets a little bit more expensive. So there's kind of a question of what I want to throw in there. I definitely need more replacement points. And then there's also the, where do I want to focus? You know, if I want to go play down in 4th Corps, I better get myself some rivering points. If I want to be somewhere else, I better get some air mobile points, you know. These things are hard balances to make. So like a couple of air mobile points could do me a bit of good. But then also, if I want troops in play, maybe I want some artillery. I'm going to have trouble staying under that 15 if I do these things, if I try to go in with any force. Maybe the 25 is a better move. Buy enough crap that I can sort of hit a little harder. it's my tendency has always been to go with a division, which gives me, and then staying under that 15, and then trying to keep it under the 5 whenever possible, just to slowly ramp up. The problem with that is that certainly didn't work last time. The North Vietnamese were able to defeat the U.S. more or less without there being, without there being an issue of commitment getting too high. So I'm beginning to think that I've just probably always been too cautious in my initial assessment. Now, the one time that I played it with someone who I really think probably had kind of an idea on the game, that I respect overall. He'd never played it before, but I respect his decision making. He went for a ramp up, and that started looking impossible as well. Maybe he was too cautious. So I'm going to look at trying to get in at that 25 points. I don't know if that means bringing 2 divisions in, though. I just can't do it. I took the 15 commitment. I bought the 1 division, and in addition, 3 riverine points, because I'm going to focus on 4th Corps. The reason for that is Arvind's ineffective down there, and there's a lot of population. There are, yes, big population centers elsewhere that I wish I could cope with, but right now I feel like that's where I can gain the biggest advantage, and I usually go in that direction. I brought the division split up into 2 places, some of it down here where there's more VC activity. One brigade in Saigon, and the armored cav components there as well. The headquarters is down here because that's where I'm going to use it more. I've got them all broken down into the fastest configuration that I have. Since I have all my air points, because I couldn't get any value out of bombing this turn, that gives me some additional artillery capacity, nowhere near what I need. Spent a lot of points on replacements, because you never want to, if you run out of US replacements or you're running low on them, all right, it's time to stop all your US-based operations, because you can't afford to lose your unit, and any losses will start to cause that. And you got to kind of worry, because the VC could start hunting your units, even in places where they're pretty safe, just to try to cause that casualty. If they can kill units, they get a big morale hit. In terms of morale, the commitment bought me, it cost me 1 morale, which I can live with. 2 morale. See, paying another morale for just 10 more points of stuff just doesn't seem worth it, even though things are kind of behind the 8 ball. I'm going to ramp up more quickly than I usually do, I think. This is what I chose as my start last time, which failed, but I'm going to try to keep ramping up, although that's scary to me. It also increased the morale of both the SVN and the NVA by 3, which is helpful. I want to get the SVN morale up. You could say, well, why didn't you spend on an economic program? Well, yeah, how close am I to the border? SVN morale, less than 70 it is. Yeah, let me cut this for an economic program. Okay, so an economic program, I don't remember what the first one is. It's like a die roll or something like that. And I gotta go look that up. We're over our hour, so. Die divided by 2. Hey! Okay, so we're in much better shape going into next turn. I was really worried when we hit this that this chart is going to be penalized all over the place. We got it above the 70. As long as things don't go badly this turn, we should be able to keep above that. And then if we can start turning the population around and everything, good things start happening. Look at the rest of the stuff. We did the ARVN recruitment, the NVA recruitment. I already pre-did that. I knew what I wanted to buy. I don't want to buy more North Vietnamese Army units. Increasing the trail is a good thing overall. Increasing the air defense was a good thing. I don't really need more replacement points, so I bought the 2 that I wanted. So then we keep going, and there's really nothing left. Infiltration, there's nothing moving along the trail. Not going to do an offensive. The U.S., I think I've got my statuses right. If I don't have them right, and I make a decision right at the beginning of the season, that's fair, you know. We already had the effectiveness of ARVN. Actually, I should not have rolled the die for the effectiveness already, and that influenced some of my U.S. decisions. I might have been building more units once I saw those leaders out there, but it's okay. And so we're ready to actually start moving pieces around on the board and fighting and showing operations. This is the point I was aiming at to try to get this. This is basically the setup of the game. I consider it play because of the amount of effort that goes into figuring out what you want to do and everything. And I'll send this one up.